Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start tonight's event, okay? It's lovely to see you all. Welcome to Waterstones, Sucky Hall Street. We're delighted to have Bill Daly with us tonight and his fabulous novel, Black Mail. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Waterstones, Sucky Hall Street is delighted to welcome home Bill Daly. Thank you.
That introduction reminds me of the old joke about the IBM manager that took early retirement, and he'd been away for about 5 years, and he bumped into one of his work colleagues. He said to him, "How are you enjoying your retirement?" He said, "Oh, it's really great." He said, "In fact, only last week I finished my first book, and I enjoyed it so much I'm thinking of reading another one." Now, while I was working, I wrote a lot of articles, mostly humorous articles for various magazines and publications, but I didn't get around to writing novels until I retired. The first novel I wrote was a humorous spy novel called The Pheasant Plucker. I tried a lot of publishers, I sent it out to a lot of publishers trying to get it published, and it really is a very frustrating process. You wait for about 6 months for no feedback, and then you get the standard letter from all of them just saying, "This book wasn't suitable for our lists." So I decided after trying quite a lot to self-publish Black Mail, The Pheasant Plucker, and that actually worked out very well because it sold quite well. Thereafter, I tried to try my hand at crime fiction, which ended up as Black Mail. I was going to say it's contemporary Glasgow, but it's almost contemporary Glasgow. I started writing Black Mail in 2010, and at that time, Rangers were playing Celtic 4 times a year, and Glasgow CID headquarters were still in Pitt Street. So you think of Black Mail, it's more 2010 than 2014. I actually then completed it about 2012, and I decided to go the other way around this time, to self-publish it first, and then go out and look for a traditional publisher. Now, a lot of writers use agents to try and help them find a publisher. I don't have an agent, but I've got something a lot better than that. I've got a mother-in-law. My mother-in-law is called Ivy. She lives in North Yorkshire. She's 92, or as she puts it, she's in her 93rd year. And she's probably the most prolific reader I've ever met in my life. She reads a lot of non-fiction. Poetry is her first love, but she reads a tremendous amount of fiction. And one thing you can be sure of, if Ivy recommends a book to you, it's going to be good. Last year, she recommended a series of books she was reading by an author called David Downing. He's an English journalist living in Munich in the 1930s, in the period of Hitler's rise to power. And the series of 6 books takes us through from there to after the war. While I was reading these books, I noticed the publisher was somebody called Old Street Publishing, which wasn't one I'd come across when I'd been looking for a publisher for The Pheasant Plucker. So I looked them up on their website, and the website said, "If you're an author looking for a publisher, send us an email and tell us about it." Can't be bad, doesn't even cost a stamp. So I put together a CV, a summary of synopsis of Black Mail in the opening chapters, and I sent it off saying I might or I might not get a response in 6 months' time. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from a guy called Ben Yard-Buller, who runs Old Street Publishing. He said, "I like what I've seen so far, Bill." He said, "Tell me a bit about your writing plans." Well, I didn't have anything as grandiose as a plan, but I'd started in the second book in the series of Blackfoot of the same detective, and I knew this guy liked publishing series, so I said, "I'm about to write a series of a detective called Charlie Anderson." He said, "Oh, that sounds good." And he said, "Tell me about Charlie Anderson. What makes him stand out from the crowd? How's he different?" I said, "The main way Charlie Anderson's different is that he's normal. I mean, he's a happily married man, he dotes on his daughter and his grandson, and he doesn't have any of the normal hang-ups that a lot of our fictional detectives have. You know, a lot of them have dysfunctional lives. They're either divorced, they're having an affair, or their wife's having an affair, or they're drinking too much, or their kids are in drugs. Charlie's got none of that. But he's been on the force for 40 years, he's a bit long in the tooth, and he's very set in his ways. You know, he can't stand new procedures like criminal profiling. He still takes all his notes in shorthand. And basically, he can't stand computers either. He just can't deal with them. They just don't make keyboards for his big stubby fingers. But he's been on this force, I said, 40 years. He doesn't get on with his boss. His arthritis has given him jip. and we meet him in Black Mail, he's just about to take early retirement. Ben said, just let me stop you there. You're planning to write a series about this bloke, and the first book is about to take early retirement. Are you sure you've thought this through? I said, listen, pal, you want somebody to write a series, and you're thinking of commissioning a bloke that's pushing 70. Have you thought this through? To give you some idea of what Black Mail's about, probably the best thing is if I read you the publisher's blurb in the back of the book. Murder and drug dealing are all in a day's work for DCI Charlie Anderson, but everything's on a different scale now that psychopath Billy McAteer is back in the streets of Glasgow. Simon Ramsey, a successful and seemingly respectable businessman, receives an email with a photograph attached. If he doesn't come up with £50,000, the sender will release it to the press and Ramsey's career will be over. In a state of panic, he contacts his mistress Laura. He tells her a blackmailer has managed to get his hands on a compromising photo of them in bed together. Terrified of what her violent husband will do if he finds out about her affair, Laura enlists the services of McAteer to deal with the blackmailer. It is a moment of madness with disastrous consequences, and it follows the DCI Anderson and his sidekick to unravel the trail of death and destruction. When I did the sort of self-published version of that originally, I finished it off with something to the effect that, and this being Glasgow, the undercurrent of religious bigotry is running through it. But my publisher didn't want to put that in, because he said, according to him, it's an established fact that overt mention of religious bigotry is a turn-off for a lot of American readers. Well, the good news, I suppose, he thinks we're going to have a lot of American readers. But as I don't see too many of them in here tonight, I'm going to tell it the way it really is. Charlie Anderson and I are more or less the same generation. We were brought up in the west of Scotland in the 1950s and the 1960s. I went to school in Renfrew. Now, this is Charlie Anderson version of my PowerPoint presentation. There were two schools in Renfrew, primary schools, a Catholic and a Protestant one. The colour coding's a wee clue. There's Moore Park School and St James's School. I lived up near Paisley, about half a mile up the road there. And when I was coming to school in the morning, I was told by my parents and my teacher that the way I had to go was down Paisley Road, along Albert Road, and back up and into the gates of St James's. I was not under any circumstance to cut across Porterfield Road. So that was all good and well if you had plenty of time in your hands, but some mornings you're a bit late for school. So you're hurrying to school, you think, it's much quicker if I do a sprint across there straight into school gates. That's fine, as long as you don't get caught by them. In which case, you're going to get a doing. I'm not talking GBH here, these are 7-8-year-old kids. They're going to grab you, pull your hair, give you a kick in the backside and warn you not to go into their territory again. The worst that would happen was some of the older boys got you. Their favourite trick was to take your school bag off your back, open it up, take your books out and drop them in a puddle. But of course you couldn't tell the teacher what had happened because you'd been told expressly never to go that way. I was hurrying to school, miss. My heels skidded and I fell backwards and I had to fasten my school bag and the books flew out and landed in a puddle. I mean, there's only so often you're going to get away with that excuse. So, as you couldn't tell this teacher what had happened, the only way you could get your own back was tit for tat revenge. You and your pals wait for one of them cutting across in front of your school, grab him and drop his boots into a puddle. At the age of 10, I left St James's in Renfrew and went up to secondary school in Glasgow. And I left with a solid foundation in the 4 essentials of a West of Scotland education: reading, writing, arithmetic, and sectarian violence. Now, I couldn't, in all honesty, say going to St Aloysius was broadening my horizons. I mean, I'm going from an all-Catholic school to an all-Catholic school, fair enough. I'm going from a mixed-sex school to an all-boys school, alright? I'm going from an area of secular teachers to an establishment where the majority of the teaching staff are Jesuit priests. Don't get me wrong, St Aloysius is an absolutely brilliant school. And the classmates were a great bunch of guys, the standard of teaching was superb, overall it was an outstanding academic education. Perhaps the only slight downside being it was perfectly possible to get to the age of 18 and the only contact you'd ever had with a Protestant was dumping his school bags into a puddle. From school, I went up to university. And the one thing my mother insisted on, the first thing I had to do when I got there, was join the University Catholic Society. Because she knew I was going to be meeting girls. And she wanted to make sure that all the girls I met would be good Catholics. By the way, good is not an adjective in that sentence. It's part of a hyphenated compound noun. My mother never in her life referred to anybody as a Catholic. Do you know Mrs. Harris down the road, Mommy? Oh, aye, she's a good Catholic. I was living at home when I was at university. And one Saturday night in the first term, I said to my mother, I'm going out tonight, Mum. She said, oh, you got a date, son? I said, yes, Mum. She said, well, that's nice. Is she a good Catholic? I mean, I'm 18, for God's sake. My hormones are all over the place. I've got testosterone to burn. I'm really hoping she's going to be a bad Catholic. But it's when you leave university and go to work that the fun really starts. And I went to work in IBM Greenock in the Information Systems Department. That was a group of, overall, more than 100 people, maybe 150 people. And everybody in that group knows everybody else's religion. So when a new guy arrives, the group wants to know what food does he kick with. Now, nobody's going to ask you outright. I mean, the West of Scotland Mail is far too subtle for that. Oh, hello, you're from Glasgow? From Renfrew, actually. Oh, yeah, Renfrew, pa. Do you follow the football? Aye. What's your team? Now, if you say Celtic or Rangers, we've got you pigeonholed. I mean, the statistical probability in those days of a Catholic supporting Rangers or a Protestant supporting Celtic was so insignificant it's not worth bothering about. The problem came when the new boy said, I support Partick Thistle. Well, that's a real bummer. I mean, it possibly did support Partick Thistle. Some of those people do exist. But if he didn't come from Maryhill, the chances are he was just trying to duck the issue. In which case, you waited for your opportunity to slip the killer question into the conversation. Which school did you go to, pal? Now, the rule of thumb was, if it begins with Saint or a lady, he was a Tim, anything else, he was a Billy. Now, I don't know if that's foolproof, but it seemed to work pretty well. There's no point in trying to opt out, by the way. I went to such and such a school, but I've recently joined the Church of Scientology, or I've converted to Islam, or I'm now an atheist. You can be an atheist if you want, pal, but we want to know, are you a Catholic atheist or a Protestant atheist? None of this was done with any real sense of discrimination. I mean, nobody at Brown's Flat I know ever got promoted or held back because of his religion. And the worst that happened to you was to get piss taken out on a Monday morning if your team had a bad result at the weekend. But for Charlie Anderson, it was a bit different. He didn't join IBM. He joined the Glasgow Police. And at that time, they had a reputation for religious discrimination. Not quite the level they are you see in Ulster, but not that far off it. Charlie himself, he didn't get involved in any of that stuff. He was a Partick Thistle man through and through. But there was a young officer in the force, Tony O'Sullivan, a Catholic in his 30s, and he had a real chip in his shoulder, a thing about his career being held back because of his religion. Another character central to the plot is a guy called Billy McAteer. He's a Glasgow hard man. He's in his 50s. And he's been in and out of jail all his life, probably in jail more than out of it. We'll first meet him in the book in a brief prologue, which is dated September 1980. So the book's 2010, so this is 30 years previously. Billy McAteer, a private in the British Army, was in his first tour of active duty in Northern Ireland when the bomb exploded in the crowded pub. Off duty, perched in a high stool when chatting to his mates, when the blast erupted from behind the bar's floor-to-ceiling plate glass mirror, his 16 stones plucked from the stool and flung like a ragdoll across the room, pursued by a million shards of mirror. His body slammed into the far wall, the fragments of lancing glass ripping away his ear, exploding his left eyeball, slicing the flesh from his cheekbone and ripping his nostrils to shreds. It took several hours on the operating table to rebuild his features, followed by months of plastic surgery to graft skin from his buttocks to his face. Billy McAteer is not a happy bunny. We were told later in the book by Charlie, McAteer went to Northern Ireland with a chip in his shoulder and came back with a fish supper. He had a glass eye at one stage to replace the eye he'd lost in the bomb, but he lost it in a pub brawl, and he thought I wouldn't bother even replacing it because he thought the vacant eye socket added to his hard man image. The extract that I'd like to read tonight, I'll finish with that, this comes a third of the way through the book, and it's the first time that Tony O'Sullivan and Billy McAteer's paths cross. The scenario is there's been a murder in Glasgow. Charlie Anderson suspects that McAteer knows something about it and he wants him brought in for questioning. The police get a tip-off that McAteer's drinking with one of his mates in Tenants and Boyers Road. So Tony O'Sullivan and a detective constable are sent across to bring McAteer in. It's early evening and O'Sullivan knows the pub's going to be very quiet. So in order not to create a scene, he tells the constable to wait outside while he goes in to get McAteer. O'Sullivan scanned the pub from the doorway. There were only a handful of early evening customers. 3 pensioners, half pints of heavy on the table in front of them, their eyes fixed on a large screen with a rerun of an Italian football match was being shown with the sound turned off. A teenage couple sitting in an alcove, arguing heatedly, and 2 tall men propping up the bar. As O'Sullivan approached the bar, he could see the reflection of McAteer's scarred features in the mirror. He was leaning with one elbow on the counter, his back to the door. "Billy McAteer," O'Sullivan spoke quietly. "What's your problem, pal?" McAteer responded without turning round. "Detective Sergeant O'Sullivan, Glasgow CID. O'Sullivan cupped his warrant card in the palm of his hand and thrust it at arm's length in front of McAteer's face. "I'd like you to accompany me to police headquarters. Inspector Anderson wants a word with you." McAteer studied the badge. Then, without turning round, he pushed O'Sullivan's hand away and picked up his pint glass from the bar. Taking a sip, he resumed his conversation. O'Sullivan tapped him on the shoulder. McAteer twitched his arm away and spun round, flicking at his shoulder with his fingertips as if trying to dislodge something unpleasant. "Gonna no do that, pal. I didn't pay good money for this jumper for you to wipe your monkey paws on it." "You heard me, McAteer." O'Sullivan spoke quietly but forcibly. "Either you come outside with me right now or I'm taking you out." "It's Mr. McAteer to you," he spat, thrusting his face to within inches of O'Sullivan's. The exchange had attracted no attention from the bar staff or the other customers. McAteer took a step backwards and eyed O'Sullivan up and down. "And Anderson has the cheek to send a papist to pick me up." "You're a papist, aren't you, sonny?" he sneered. "The red heat's a dead giveaway. If there's 2 things in this world I can smell a mile off, it's pigs and papists. And right now the stench of a minging Fenian pig is filling my nostrils and making me want to bolt." McAteer took a sudden pace forward, again thrusting his face to within inches of O'Sullivan's. "And what does your inspector want with me, Paddy? Is he going to make me say 3 affairs and 3 Hail Marys for being a naughty boy?" O'Sullivan didn't react to the taunts, but neither did he back off. He didn't concede an inch. If anything, he pushed his face even closer to McAteer's, so close he could taste the stale beer in his breath. For several seconds each held his ground, stock still, staring unblinkingly. Stags with antlers locked, each defying the other to make the next move. It was McAteer who made the move. Without lowering his gaze, he took a step backwards and tipped the contents of his almost full pint down the front of O'Sullivan's trousers. "Oh, terribly sorry about that." He nudged his companion's arm and burst out laughing as he placed his empty beer glass down on the counter. "My hand must have slipped. Barman, there's been a wee accident. A towel from a friend, if you please." McAteer lowered his voice. "Now, if you just change your nappy and wait over by the door, Paddy, I'll be with you as soon as I finish my discussion." Turning his back on O'Sullivan, McAteer resumed his conversation. O'Sullivan took the bar towel he'd been handed and dabbed ineffectually at the sticky beer clinging to his trousers. He could feel the cloying liquid seeping through to his skin. Reaching out, he grabbed McAteer by the shoulder. "Either you walk out of here with me this instant," he hissed in his ear, "or I'll fucking well drag you out." "This is harassment." McAteer stared unblinkingly at O'Sullivan. "I'm warning you, Paddy," he growled, prodding O'Sullivan hard in the chest. "You're fucking claimed." So the relationship between O'Sullivan and McAteer got off to a bad start, and from there on it's downhill all the way. Thanks for listening. Thank you.